All right. Thank you for being here today, talking with writer Bracha Goetz. And you've written a lot of things. And what is your process for writing as far as where do you write? What time do you normally write? And what equipment do you use to write?
Okay. Well, the best stuff comes somehow during the night. So I keep a pad by my bed with a pen, and in the dark, I wake up and I've got these incredible ideas. I wake up with them and I just start scribbling. I can't even see what I'm writing. And I try to get it all out really fast. What I've been thinking of that just comes almost always before dawn. That's when dawn breaks and all these ideas come pouring in. So that's how it works for me usually.
Why do you think it happens at that time?
I think something's going on neurologically during the night, and all these connections are being made. And I think the dream state probably helps. Um, it's relaxing, and all these new synapses form, and connections are made in my brain. And, you know, it also has to do with just be an openness. I see. I've become a religious person, so I believe like God is just like sending these ideas down like rain, and I just have to catch them, and like I'm just a vessel, and like we're all vessels, like like that's just how things flow through us into the world. So that's what I do. I try to catch the raindrops and get them on the paper. And then when I have time, I write them up. Sometimes, like, I have an example of a book. Here, this book, Let's Stay Healthy. This was written during the pandemic. I know mothers were asking me to write a book for children, um, explaining why just eating junk and what is bad for children, and why children need to exercise, and why children need good sleep, because all these things weren't happening as the children stayed home and they weren't going to school and things were going off the wire. So I said that's a great idea, but I don't know how to write this book. But like 3 days later, I woke up and there it was, the title, Let's Stay Healthy. I figured out exactly how to do the book. It was all there. Like I wrote it all down, and I called up a mother that had contacted me. I said, I got the whole thing now. I just have to put it into book form, cuz it's come.
Nice. What's your approach for writing a children's book? Are you more focused on how a kid takes it, or is there a little something in there for adults too? Kind of like I remember Tiny Toons or Bugs Bunny growing up, that you could watch that as a kid and get something out of it. But if you were an adult, you could also get something out of it that was different than with a kid.
Exactly. Like my favorite books were Dr. Seuss. And I'm still loving them as an adult. Those books can be appreciated on every level. That's really a mentor for me of how I try to write my books. So my books, growing up, I didn't grow up like in a spiritual kind of home, but I was always searching for spirituality. So I write the books that I wished I had as a child. They're books that teach like deep spiritual concepts in the most simple way possible to the youngest ages. That's what I love to do because that was my need in life. So I love to give like happiness skills to children from the beginning of life, teaching them just basic guidelines about how to live life fully. I teach that in a very simple, joyful way to really young children. So that's what I'm doing. And yet I try to do it kind of in a Dr. Seuss style, which is In other words, it's enjoyed by the children, and the parents love reading the books too, on a deeper level. Yeah.
Nice. Do you write mainly that type, or do you write any other types of writing besides the children's books?
So there's been so far 42 picture books published. And so that's the main thing. I write lots of articles, and I've written one book for adults, but that's not, I didn't really write it. It's my memoir. I took excerpts from my diaries, my journals, my letters, and I just filled in the missing pieces, and it covers 20 years from age 12 to 32 of my search for spirituality, and then like healing from food addictions, because what I believe is the basis of addictions is a hungry soul, a genuinely hungry soul. And if we don't fill it up with joyful gratitude, then we're hungry, and we never can get enough. And we try to fill it with externalities in a desperate kind of way. And I think that's why addictions are so widespread. So that's the book, the only book I wrote for adults. And I don't really enjoy writing articles for adults either, um, because I don't like I don't like writing a lot of words. I like I like to say things in the shortest way possible. And I heard another podcast that you write poetry, so as a poet you would understand that, because what a poet does is try to get to the essence, and that's what I love to do. Get to the essence, and get the message out to the world.
When you do your illustrations, is that through someone else that you use all the time, or is it different people, or have you done those also?
Good question. I do love art, and I do love to draw, but I haven't yet illustrated any of my own books. So far, the publishing companies have hired illustrators for all my books, and some of the books have been illustrated by the same people, but others not. So, and sometimes I get to choose the illustrator, and sometimes the publisher gets to choose the illustrator, but I do work with them, which is awesome part of the creative process. We go back and forth just through the internet communicating. Like they do drafts first, and I give corrections of how I could see it, and they do revisions in it where, like, once all the words get done, then we work on the illustrations. When the edits are finished for the words, then we do the illustrations. And so I love being part of that creative process.
With your publishing, what's your experience with that? Was it always the same publisher, or did you use a different publisher for your memoirs versus your picture books?
Yeah, I've used different publishers. Um, and now, with my 40th children's book, I stopped sending my books out to traditional publishers, and my children took over as the publishers. They told me, it started with Let's Stay Healthy. They told me, don't send this manuscript to a publisher. We want to become a publishing company now and do the business of selling your books. So now they've taken over, and I no longer work with other publishing companies.
Do they have their own press, or is it print on demand?
Um, no, they use a printing company. It's not print on demand, but and my memoir is the only book that's print on demand. All the rest are hardcover books that get printed and by a regular, printing press. Yeah, and
Okay.
yeah.
Do you use test groups or ideal readers or writing groups for developing ideas or seeing what people think about them before you write them, or after, or which part of the process would you use them?
That's a great question. Sometimes I write because I see there's a demand for something. people are calling me and now that they know me, people call me and tell me, we need a book like this. Or I just see it. I see that there's a need for a certain book in the world. Like I've written books about explaining disabilities to children that don't have disabilities because I couldn't find a good book like that. Explaining, like for instance, it gives basic guidelines. Like children normally they stare at a child with a visible disability because they're curious for one thing. But I say that besides, I got how to write this book from a workshop that someone was giving in school. So that's how I developed the book. Um, so they stare, and there's another 5-letter word that also begins with S, and that's smile. If a child adds their smile when they're staring, that creates a connection to the person, between them and the person that has a disability. It creates a bond. It opens hearts. It changes everything. So it's easy to remember because it's also a 5-letter word like stare, and it's smile. So if children add their smile, and this is just one guideline, but I teach many guidelines about how to be inclusive and more interactive, because sometimes children who are not so neurodiverse, they won't be so interactive because they just don't know. No one's explained the guidelines. And so things like that I love to do. My background is in public health, so I love being able to explain these things to children.
How do you create a schedule for writing, or do you use different things to have some sort of accountability to someone or some time for scheduling to finish a book?
Right, good question, because I don't write long books, so it might not be like a process that's similar to yours. It doesn't take me a long time. When I'm motivated, it like pours out. Like I read a quote from Kurt Vonnegut. He goes, writing's easy. You just kind of cut the vein and it flows out. That's how it feels. Like you can't even keep it inside you. It's kind of dripping right out there. It's like I can't even stop it from coming out. When this motivation is there to get a book out into the world, it just pours right out. And I don't mind the editing process either because it's kind of fun. To me, it's like a crossword puzzle, like a game you're playing, and you try this word here or that to make it a little better. If I always recommend to writers or any art form, if you have a playful attitude, it takes the pressure off and you're just enjoying the process of creation. And so, yeah, that's how I do it. To me, it's playful, and I enjoy that. And you just try to get it as good as you can get it. I'm never looking for perfection. I'm just looking for, is this good enough to get out in the world and do something meaningful? So that's when it's ready. Yeah.
So you do the word part and you get all that done. Do you have pictures in your head when you're writing of what you think the picture for that page should be? And do you tell a illustrator that, or how much, I guess, interaction do you have with your illustrators?
Great question. When I have a strong idea about something, I put in parentheses what I'm picturing for that page. But I don't do it all the time. It's just if I really feel this is how and I just give it as a suggestion because maybe the illustrator has an even better idea. So I put down, how about do it this way? This is just an idea to use. And I've had illustrators that have gone just run with the ideas and done so much better than I could ever have imagined. So enhance the words. So it's a real joy to watch it happen, to watch the books come to life in color, and really it's awesome.
Are you able to keep the originals of the illustrations? Like, do you have in a collection the illustrative works of the books without the words, or like if you like a picture a lot, can you get it to frame it, or
That's so interesting. I've never asked for that. It's such an interesting idea. but I do have some originals, and I use them when I give presentations to in schools for organizations about writing children's books, and I show the process. I show how they usually do it in pencil first. They do a draft on tracing paper, and then from that they add the color. And now with computer graphics, a lot is done by computer graphics. A lot, sometimes they just do the background in computer graphics, and the main characters will be actually drawn or painted. It's really, they can use a combo. Some books are completely, let's see if I have an example. This is interesting. This is done completely with computer graphics. This book is called The Invisible Book, about all the things that are invisible. And let me see if I have an example. I don't have it. But I have another book that she illustrated totally artwork. Totally. She did it with, was it, what type of, not finger paint, whatever. I just, a certain type of painting that she used. So it's totally different. You would never believe it was the same artist. It's really interesting. So, yeah.
Do you have input on what type of medium for the pictures? Like if they're using markers or pencil or acrylics or oil, do you have any input on that?
I guess I could, but I've never told anybody what to do. I'd like them to be as creative as possible. I usually say do it with as much vivid color as you can, engaging. Um, I don't tell them what type of medium, to totally free to use what they feel is best. I want them to really do what pours out from their soul into the book. Yeah.
So would you then look at all of your picture books as a collaboration? Then not just because of the illustrator, but do you have as much input from people on the words?
Oh, yeah. I love that it gets edited. Oh, I didn't fully answer that question. That we give the books to different people to read it, especially experts in the field, that if I'm writing on certain subjects, and we get endorsements from them too, and they tell us corrections or things to add to the books. It's very helpful. I love to use different types of experts in fields to give their contributions. And I enjoy the editing process because I want the book to be as good as possible, to be most effective. Um, so yeah, the book gets read by a number of people until we feel like it's as good as it gets. Yeah.
Do you pick your type of paper stock and the size of the book, or are they uniform, or do you have different sizes?
Great. So now that I'm working with my children, they actually ask my opinion about that. With the publishing companies I used to work with, nobody ever asked me that. But I don't really have such a big opinion about it. It's not something I feel that I understand so well, but um, I'm starting to get the hang of it as I collaborate with my children on this, which types of books should be bigger and which are smaller. Let's see if I have examples. Yeah. So the book about disabilities, Let's Appreciate Everyone, big book here. And I guess because we want to highlight all the interactions of the children, while the Invisible Book is a more standard size here, of a boy searching through the world, recognizing all these things we believe in that are invisible, like our thoughts, our feelings, the winds. We don't see the wind. How does a magnet pick up a paperclip? It's invisible, the magnetism. How does a book just fall down when we let go? There's invisible gravity. And I'm showing it's not so hard to believe we too are invisible souls, and there's an invisible God in the world. I'm just trying to explain it in my kind of a scientific way to children, there's all these other things we believe in that are invisible as well. It's not far-fetched. So yeah, I love to use my background in science to explain a lot, help children understand spiritual things in a more concrete way.
Yeah, kind of a common sense scientific approach. I like that.
Yes.
With the size of books, I found that it was a thing that I put more thought than I expected into it, especially with my first book. I wanted it to, because it has a existence type spirituality with it, a religious undertone, overtone, whichever. But I got the size closest to the King James Bible that I had growing up because
That's
I like the
great.
size of that in my hand.
That's
And
great.
then I think about the children's books I used to read, and I think Golden Books was one of them, and they were a
I
certain size, and
yes.
you could tell which those were. And then there were some other ones that I can't remember the name of them, but they were all the same size. So when they're on the shelf, you could have them in this section and this section. You could tell the difference. And
Yeah.
then there were a few that had, I think it was a Mickey Mouse book that had a puppet that you put your hand in the back and the puppet's in the front and it's on every page. And, Mickey interacts on every page of the book. It was something
Mm-hmm.
about the Mona Lisa getting stolen or something, but it's, have you, do you do different books like pop-up books or
Yeah, let's
ones
see. I
with
think I
puppets in them?
have, do I have an example here? Oh, this is something different. Like this is a book where you stick your fingers through the
Hmm,
holes and
okay.
you do different good deeds, you know? So that's what this is.
Okay.
Yeah, and I have board books. So this is a book about swimming safely. Let's swim safely. Because again, a parent reached out to me. They said toddlers are not getting enough information about how to be safe near a pool or near any
Mm.
water. So I wrote this book. It's a board book for really little children, and the little children memorize it. Let's swim safely. They've got it down. They know the rules now, how to be around a pool. So it's just basic stuff. I love being able to do this. I I was studying actually to be a physician and I went in a different path in life, but I used my background in public health now through children's books. What are your what was your first book?
Well, I think probably that I could remember it was the Golden Books and those other, I don't know if they were Disney, but maybe they were because it was Goofy and Pluto and things like that, a little Donald Duck situation. And then there was one about, well, The Little Engine That Could. That was probably
Oh,
one of the first ones. And
yes.
that was a bigger book than the rest of them.
I love that
That was
book.
a good one.
But my question, I really meant, what is the first book that you wrote, published?
Oh, okay. It's a starting point. It's a, I would call it like a adventure fiction type. What would happen in the world if everybody had to depend on everyone else? I mean, that's a rough explanation
Wow.
of it. It's a little more, it's a little more apocalyptic than that. But yeah,
I
that was the first book.
see. Very nice. Beautiful. Yeah. Okay, great. I know I'm curious. I was curious what types of books. I heard on another podcast that you wrote two poetry books and yeah.
Yeah, I have 3 poetry books out now, and then a couple, maybe 3 science fiction, like
Ah,
shorter night science fiction that were made for Kindles, so you could proceed through them quicker because it's kind of daunting when you start to read the Iliad on a Kindle and it's just thousands and thousands of pages. But
yes.
so those, and then that first book is the novel that was going to be 3 books. And when I got through like the first or second draft of 3 books, I was like, nobody's going to read all these. So I condensed it down to one. But
Wow.
yeah,
Great.
when you write, besides the idea of your picking the thing that you think needs to exist in the world at that time, the need for it, what else inspires you and keeps you writing?
I guess, it's mainly that. I'm very message driven. Like somebody once interviewed me and said, "Well, how do you do character development?" And I said, "Oh, I don't do it." And they said, "Well, how about plot development?" No, I said, "That's not really what I do either." So I go, "What's in your books?" I said, "Really, it's a message. My books are message books." And sometimes even the illustrations themselves create the story behind the book. So I just try to get messages across in a very delightful way. Like I even have books about the prevention of abuse of children, and those books have been really big game changers. Could you imagine, like, hundreds of thousands of people have bought these books, and children tell me they're the favorite books that I've written, and I'm like, "What? I never expected that." But children love the guidelines. They want to know how to be in this world in a safe way. So that's what I love doing. And I forgot the question. What was the question that you had?
What inspires you to write?
Oh, yeah. So it really is getting a message out in the world. Like, I'm not really interested in writing for writing's sake. I just, I just enjoy getting a message out in a way that it could be readily absorbed in a joyful way.
So, what do you think about the idea of a muse?
Do I want to amuse? Oh, well, I want to be
About a muse, not amusing, but a muse, like a writing
oh,
muse.
what is a writing muse?
Yeah. What do you think about that idea of it?
I'm not sure what it is. What is a
Like
writing?
the inspiration for your writing. Like like
The
I guess if somebody was a romance writer, they would say this relationship I had with this person, or this person is the muse for it. If you're a Roman, or back in the day of the Romans, they would say that there was some sort of deity that was their muse or something else.
Yes,
What do you think
it's
about the idea of that?
totally, totally, it's from the Almighty. I feel that any gift I was given to write is from the Almighty. That's how I feel. So, and so, like, it kind of takes away the ego, and it also takes away the fear of failure. I'm just trying to do, you know, what I'm supposed to be doing here. That's it. And like, if I don't do it well enough, I'm just making my efforts, and so that's how I feel about it. It's just I'm just like the vessel, and I feel very blessed to be able to do this. And and also I even though I'm an adult, in certain ways I didn't really grow up. Like I can get into the headspace of a 6-year-old boy who's usually the main character in my books. I can get into that space still because I'm still a very curious person, and I have a big sense of wonder about life, and I love to learn. So that's the main character in my book. It's a boy who's about 6 years old, and he's sharing with other children what he's learned. So it's not like they're learning it from an adult, they're learning it from another child on their level.
Hmm. When How did you pick then to have a main character as a 6-year-old boy?
Because somehow I identify like that. I have no idea why. I remember when I was like doing plays in school, I always wanted to be like the 6-year-old boy in the play. I don't know why, I can't explain it, but that's how I think. So it just comes naturally to me to write in that voice.
Okay.
Yeah.
What kind of plays were you doing?
Like in grade school, when they have plays, and like at the community center they would put on plays, and I would be in a drama group, and I just wanted the part of the little boy in the play.
Were you
Yeah.
doing like Tom Sawyer or what kind of,
Yeah,
or
that
just
kind of, yeah, whatever it was. I don't even remember the names of the plays, but that's what I was doing. I would be that, I wanted that role. I didn't want to be like the star, but I wanted, if I wanted to be in the show, then that's what I would be. Yeah. Like,
okay?
or like The Sound of Music or something like that.
Okay. I remember in middle school being a steamboat captain, and it had a singing part, so that was
Uh,
rough. But yeah.
that's great.
When do you think that spirituality uh, started to come out or affect your writing?
Yeah, well, I was searching for it for years. I was born Jewish, but it just like I didn't see the point of being Jewish. I didn't see its value. So I searched into other religions, Christian Science and Buddhism and different stuff. I was searching and searching, and I found elements of truth in all different religions, but nothing fit like a perfect puzzle piece until I really found the spirituality in my own heritage. And that's when I came to Israel. The summer after my first year of medical, I went to Harvard. I graduated and I went to medical school. And after my first year of medical school, I went to Israel for just 6 weeks. I had a break and I didn't come back. I stayed in Israel. I became religious and I lived here for 10 years. So then I went back to the States, and now I've come back to Israel again. So now I'm recording here in Israel.
Oh, okay. I would have done it in your time then instead of Eastern time if I had known you were
Oh
over
yeah.
there
Now
to
this
make
is
it more
good.
convenient.
It's a perfect. I picked a time that works great for me. It's now
Okay.
like it's like if when it was like 11 for you, it's like 6 for me. 6 in the
Okay.
evening.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's not too bad then.
Yeah, you could see it's dark out now.
Yeah. I was wondering where you were. I was like, goodness.
Yeah. Yeah, so
What do you think
that's when I started to get the spiritual nourishment that I was craving for years. Yeah.
what do
What
you
was your
think's the difference between a person that says they're spiritual and a person that says they're religious?
Oh, so they call some people say I don't want organized religions. I just want to be
Mm,
spiritual. So I say, okay, you don't want to be organized. But the thing is, like these organized religions, like Judaism was made by a revolutionary. At one time, it was not made by, but Abraham was a revolutionary. What he was doing was weird. It was nobody was doing what he was doing. So, like, if it, he was being spiritual, he found spirituality in nature. He learned from it, and and now. Um, Judaism has all these guidelines that I follow, I try to follow. And because I've seen enough evidence in my life that it makes sense to me that it's divinely inspired. So I'm I'm kind of a rebellious person, but I've seen enough to come to understand that this makes sense to me. So I'm really happy to follow these guidelines, and I've learned them in a deep kind of way as an adult, so that like when I was growing up, my father told me they were fairy tales, like Bible stories, they're not really to believe in.
mm,
So I didn't have much faith in that, but understanding them on a much deeper level now as an adult, what we learn is they're kind of written in code too, and they're understood on many different levels. So once I can study them on those levels, then they don't seem like fairy tales to me at all anymore.
mm.
Yeah.
What point do you think, or I guess it would be an age, at what age in life did you, or do you remember realizing that adults weren't always right?
Oh my, that's a great question. Wow. You know, when I got to Harvard, a lot of my illusions were shattered because
Mm,
I was so searching for wisdom so desperately. So I studied really hard, and my parents were like, "Why are you going there?" Like, they were not into me going to this private college and this elite kind of place. And I wasn't brought up that way. So, but I felt like I want to go to like the top place to learn the greatest wisdom in life. So I worked really hard to go there, and it it was an illusion. I mean, I felt like I got to meet like the most famous people, and I saw that they were just like anybody else. And I saw that there's nothing really to fame and fortune and power. And I feel really grateful that I got to the top of that illusory mountain and saw there's really nothing much up there. So
mm.
that's not what to strive for. I realized those goals, those kind of adult-like goals, don't really give you lasting happiness in life. So then I went searching for what does bring lasting happiness, and that's when I learned about really the guidelines for gratitude, and that's what shapes my life now. Living a life from gratitude from the moment I wake up till I go to sleep at night. And so that's what I spread in my books, teaching children happiness skills from the beginning of life so they don't have to play catch up like most adults have to play when they learn these lessons later on.
So do you think that it was college is when you realized that adults weren't always right?
Yeah, that was the beginning of shattering the illusions. Yeah.
Yeah, that is I agree with that time frame. Like I want it to be earlier just as an adult looking back and say, "No, I knew that earlier on, but I don't think I did." I remember first thinking about it when I was policing. I was a trooper in Virginia for a while, and you think back to like your kindergarten teacher and you're like, "Oh, my kindergarten teacher, they knew everything. They told me what to
Right.
do. They were whatever, whatever." And then I found myself arresting a kindergarten teacher and I thought, "Wow, this
Wow.
is this this person is out there and I held them in such high regard." That doesn't mean
Wow.
that kindergarten teachers are all bad. That just
Right.
means that people are people. So
Yes.
it is
Yeah.
I would describe it that way as the illusion of it all. And then
Yes.
you take a couple philosophy classes, and if you were raised in a religious way, that's probably going to make you question that. And I think it should. And if it stands up to it, then that's fine. You know, you still got to search for what's going on and what makes sense to you. So it's, hmm, I agree.
Yeah.
The illusion of I've heard it explained as you get to the top of the mountain and then there's just more mountains, so you see other things that you want to do. But it I equate it with financial independence. Like when you're a kid, at least the experience was for me, you you can't get everything you want.
Right.
So you want a lot of things because you can't have them. But then when you get to the point where you've worked for it and then you can get it, whether it's a certain type of food, going to a certain restaurant, living in a certain place, whatever it is, and then you get it and you're like, wow, this is not as cool as I thought it was going to be. And it might not be as worth all of the time I sacrificed getting the money to get it. I
Yes.
remember growing up, my mom saying when I was like, "Can we get a mini bike?" And she said, "Well, if you save up for it." And I was like, "Oh, okay, I'll save up for it." And it was a couple $100 back then, and that might as well have been a million to me. So I'm
Yes.
saving up as much as I can. And then she goes, I can't remember the whole lead into the conversation, but in essence, my dad was like, "Why don't you get a job somewhere?" And I was a kid, and my mom was like, you just got to be a kid for a while. And that, I remember that. Weird how those little things you remember of just be a kid for a
Yes.
while. But when you get those things, it often seems like they're not what you thought they were. The
Right.
problem is you got to get to the position where you can get them and you can achieve it. So then you can understand it a little better. Because if you don't have money and you've always looked at these other things and thought, I want that, I want that, I want that,
Yep.
and you don't have a chance to get it, that's just your life is always wanting it. Maybe you get to the
Ex-
point where you just give up, but
yep.
it is a little freeing once you realize that maybe you don't need everything.
Yep.
Or
Exactly right.
as Christopher Lowell says, the interior designer from the Home Shopping Network, or no, from the HDTV, it's nice to have a few things that mean a lot rather than a lot of things that just mean a little.
That's
So
great.
I like that.
Yes. I I was going to say that, let's see, where is it? My newest book is called Don't Read This Book. This book, it's that little voice in our heads that you were talking about. This voice, I'm teaching young children that there's a voice we all have in our heads that's saying, "You just need that to make you happy. Focus on what you're lacking. Focus on what you're missing. You got to be miserable." If we all have this voice in our heads, and the sooner we come to recognize this voice, we can overpower it. And we go, oh my gosh, it's that voice trying to make me miserable. Instead,
Mm.
I could focus on what I already have. That thing, once we get it, it's not going to make us happy anymore. It's like we just think so. It's like an illusion, you know? We think it's going to make us happy until we get it. And so that's what I'm teaching children. And what I realized, this book took me 30 years to write. This did not come easily. Like 30 years
Mm.
ago, I wrote the book and I had the whole book written. I had the title, the whole book, and it wasn't ready. I said, something's wrong with this book. It's missing joy. It feels kind of scary, that voice in the head. Something's not right about it. It wasn't until like 2 years ago that I realized the piece of wisdom that was missing. And that's the surprise ending to the book. That that voice in our head, it's also put there for our own good. That voice, it's like this. It's like a barbell. You know, it's like a weight that if we push it off, we get stronger. We build our muscles by pushing off that inner critic, the voice that's trying to make us miserable. If we push it off, that's how we grow our gratitude muscles all day long. And the more we push it off, the greater our gratitude muscles become, stronger. Yeah.
Do you think that's why people seem to be imbued with that idea of, I guess, wanting more or just want, I guess?
Yes, we all have it. It's a natural part of us. It's actually put there from God, which I did not understand until recently. It's actually put in us in order to develop our gratitude muscles, pushing it off. It's a natural part of life, that force that's trying to make us miserable. And once we know that, oh my gosh, it's like the most empowering feeling in the world. Once we get that, we can really have control over our own happiness.
Hmm. There, I like that because there are times where I can remember in life. Usually, it's during a situation or something that's happening that I have to say to myself, okay, remember this feeling because it's not going to feel like this forever, but this is a good feeling. And you want to come back and be able to revisit that idea of that contentment and gratitude and just being, whether it's at, in awe of something or just
Yes.
appreciating the moment that you're allowed to have right then. So,
Yes, exactly. We don't do that nearly enough in life. And that's
hmm,
really our purpose for being here, to experience this world in gratitude. We were put in this amazing garden. It's still an amazing garden, but we've gone so far off. We take our blessings in life for granted instead of appreciating that we have an infinite amount of blessings this very moment, every single person.
I like it. I like it. I mean, that's not to say that there's not things out there that aren't worth working for and attaining, because there's plenty of that too. But
Oh, yeah.
maybe maybe you just seem to remember those. Maybe that's the lesson you learn the most, and why it sticks in your mind, of why you think, I always wanted this thing, and now that I got this thing, it's not what I thought. But there are some things, and some, mainly more experiences or just places to be in your life, that, not a place like physically, but just the state of mind, I guess, that for me is what I can remember more and say, okay, this was worth all that sacrifice or all that work or all that whatever to get to this point, that this is worth it. And there's
Absolutely.
some things in life like that, but it does seem like the more you want, the less getting those things really lives up to the expectation, I guess.
Yeah, well, if we're in this state of always wanting, then we're not appreciating what we have. So
Hmm.
the more time we can spend really appreciating what we have, the blessings just keep coming. I mean, that really is the law of attraction. If we appreciate what we have, we'll have more to appreciate because we've become more appreciative people.
Okay, nice. I like that. That was explained well. That's what you
Thank
do, I
you.
guess. Take
Thank
complex
you.
issues and explain them simply. Good.
Exactly. Thank you.
I did wonder, as I wonder with most people from Harvard, how long it would take into a conversation before you said you went to Harvard.
Yeah, I say
It
it
was 30
because
minutes. It was 30 minutes.
okay.
So I was expecting 5 minutes. So that was good. That was exceeded my expectation by a whole lot.
If I say it, then people will give more respect to my ideas. I just feel that because I come across very childlike and almost silly. And then if I say I went to Harvard, then people go, "Oh, maybe she's actually saying something intelligent." So it's
Hmm.
helpful.
I feel I feel like, though, that Harvard right now, Harvard back when you went, is probably a different place than it is right now, as a lot of places, I think. But I wonder if in the future, if things keep going the way they are, that saying you've went to Harvard is going to be a negative versus a positive. Like,
Yeah,
it's more
yeah,
of just identifying a subset of beliefs of society, rather than saying I learned how to think vigorously.
absolutely. And that's not what I learned there. Exactly right. No, it's true. And I posted on social media about this. People were saying people are now going to be embarrassed to say they went to Harvard. And I said, I'm not embarrassed to say I went to Harvard because I want to show that you can still grow and learn afterwards and really transform your life, even if you went to Harvard.
Mm.
So my life completely transformed afterwards. So I remember I was going to take a course at the Harvard Divinity School, again, when I was searching into the Bible, and it it was so disturbing what I heard in that class. Like, I didn't end up taking it. It was all about, like, we're going to analyze how this person wrote this part of the Bible and this part, and it has nothing to do with God. And they were trying to prove that God had nothing to do with the Bible. And it was like, I didn't
Mm.
believe in God at the time either, but I just didn't like what I was hearing. It wasn't I was looking for a more spiritual situation, and it wasn't what I was going after. So, yeah.
Yeah.
I
Hmm.
learned I learned at Harvard how to write great papers. I didn't even read the books. Again, I'm not a reader. Like I write short books and I don't read a lot. So I'd read the beginning of the book and the end of the book and a few pages in the middle, and I got the gist of it. And I'd write really good papers. And I learned how to write the papers showing that there is no absolute truth, there's only relative truth. And that's what I needed to say in every paper. And that's what I learned how to do at Harvard.
Okay. I had a teacher that was a former Harvard professor when I was taking a statistics class, and that was the hardest class I've ever had. And maybe that's just because of the calculus in it, and I don't have the calculus mind, or I haven't exercised that calculus muscle enough. But I when I was taking that, I had to take time off from work to take that class because it took up so much space in my brain thinking about
Right.
it, and I could feel different parts of my mind heating up trying
Yeah.
to do backwards regressions and find standard deviations and logging
Oh,
things and looking at scatter plots. But between that and then I took a contracts class that was a distance class for Harvard, and I like that class a lot. That didn't have it just had the education stuff in it. It didn't feel like it had any other twist or anything else in it. But I did go to a Catholic school for college, and I had a couple classes that were taught by nuns, and they didn't wear the habit, and I was disappointed. I remember being disappointed about that. But
so you've done many different things in your life. Wow.
yeah, but those were I did. There was a time I was thinking about being a preacher, but
Yeah.
it, I think policing worked out better for me.
Wow. Wow. So
When you
interesting.
when you market your books, and so you have your publisher that does it, and now your family publishing, how do you do marketing and publishing for your different types of books? Is it different for your maybe adult book, not an adult book like that, but a book written for adults, versus your children or picture books? And do you have self-help books also?
I just have the only book for adults is my memoir. Yeah,
Okay.
that's called Nourish the Soul. Filling the emptiness within. That's what it's about. So that it's just like a documentary about my life. So basically, when I do, um, when I give presentations, I kind of act out excerpts from the book for that book.
Mm.
And when I do the presentations for my children's books, also I'm acting out the book for audiences. So um, it's different. I can do it like I can do it for different audiences, like in the same venue at night for the adults and in the daytime for children, like I do things like that. And what else do I do? I just write articles about the books, and I do podcasts like this. I love doing podcasts because I'm an introvert, and podcasts are one on one, which introverts love. And also, introverts introverts don't like small talk, and I love just talking about meaningful stuff. So podcasts are like so ideal for me. I love them.
Hmm. Have you taken the personality battery? I think it's called the Myers Briggs, that gives you
Yeah,
the four initials. So
yeah.
you'd be an like an INFJ or something like that.
You got it
Hmm.
exactly. Good work.
It's
That's amazing. I'm impressed.
those tests are, I don't know how often they use them now, but I liked them just for some insight where it would make you think about things. But
Exactly.
it does depend on when you answer the questions. Are you answering them like yourself, or are you answering them like yourself at work? And that's where it got different for me, because if I answered it just in my regular life, I was
Right.
also an INFJ. And then
Wow.
if I answered it like at work, one of the questions was, do you start conversations? And on my Just regular me, no. But police me, I start
Yep.
conversations all the time, usually
Yep.
with people that don't want to talk to me. So it,
Right.
it I turned out, if I did it from the work perspective, I was an XXFJ, which means they can't delineate between those first two. If you get an X
Wow.
on there, it's you're you're both or neither or whatever.
Right,
But
right, right. That's
do you
fascinating.
do you use any of the information you've learned about your own personality or personality in others when you are developing your ideas for your books? Or
Well, I mean, I'm always watching my children, and I was always watching my children, and now I'm watching my grandchildren, so I I'm always observing them and realizing what what do they need? What would be helpful for them in a book, So that's how they appear in my books. Yeah. In fact,
what things?
one of my granddaughters said to me this year, she said, "Oh, when I'm a mother, I'm always going to say yes to my children." I said to myself, "That is a great book." That's what. So my next book coming out. That's it. The Mother Who Always Said Yes. It's really a great book. I love it. Just it makes me laugh just thinking about this book. It's a riot. So you'll see what happens when a mother always says yes.
I feel like there's going to be a lesson in it to where the mom is
Yeah.
going to say yes, but it's really to show the kid that the mom is saying no and they have to accept that a certain way. I think there's going to be a
Well,
twist in that.
yeah, what happens is she just keeps saying yes and everything goes completely haywire, and
Mm.
it's a really zany life that takes place. So, yeah.
Lessons learned. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Without the words ever saying it. I said this book, the pictures are going to say everything because the words are not going to say. There's no moralizing in the book at all. The pictures will tell the whole story. Yeah.
Hmm. So that's what you're working on now?
Yeah, we're working on the illustrations for that book. Yeah. And other books too. We're also doing animations, we're doing audiobooks, whole lot of things with my creative children because my son who's running the company is a first grade teacher, and my daughter-in-law who's running the company was a preschool teacher. They're both like super creative, and so we're all doing this together.
Nice. When you pick the covers for your book, is it something that an illustrator already put together in the package of pictures for the book, or is it something that gets done after and you just say, can you do a cover like this, or they present an idea for a cover?
Great question. So we take pictures from the illustrations, and then we hire a graphic designer to create the cover. um, this went through a lot. It says here, like it was my daughter-in-law's idea to add on here, keep out caution, don't read this book. To the graphic designer's work, she put in her own input too. I think it's a really great cover, and it's got the fly represents that inner critic. It's always coming back. You keep shooing it away, and the fly just keeps coming back. And so it's a combination of what you said. We took illustrations from the book, and then a graphic designer who was not the illustrator put the cover together, and then we could add our own input as well. Yeah.
Okay. When people do the designs for the book, are they paid a set fee, or do they get some sort of profit sharing, or do you have deals that are different?
Usually, they get a set fee for how much per page they charge
Okay.
for their illustrations. Yeah.
Okay. And do you have plans to ever illustrate your own with your own drawings?
I might, but it would have to be really simple. I don't know how to draw things in perspective. I mainly draw Dr. Seuss creatures. Those are I love drawing creatures. I'm doodling all over, but I don't know how to do things in perspective. It would really look like a childlike kind of illustration if I ever do it. It might happen. I don't know.
What are the best way for people to find your books?
Oh, so right, the website is actually we're going to change the website, but for right now it's www.getzbookshop.com, and Getz is spelled that funny way, Goetz, because another one of my children said we should make it more inclusive and take the name out of it. It's going to have a different name. Um, it's going to have to do with impact, making an impact on the world. So, but right for right now, it's still www.getzbookshop.com. And I want to recommend anybody that's interested, you can download for free a chart of the pleasure ladder, which I didn't discuss on this show, but it's
Go ahead and
about,
discuss it.
oh, it takes forever. But I just want to
Oh,
tell you, no, I mean, it's a whole big thing, but I'll tell you this much. I'll show you the basics of this. It has 5 levels,
okay.
and these are the levels. They correlate with our 5 fingers. They are how to bring lasting pleasure into your life. So empowering, we have the power in our own hands. This is based on ancient mystical wisdom from the Kabbalah, and it's 5 levels of pleasure which correspond to the 5 levels of the human soul. This is the lowest level. The lowest level corresponds to all the natural physical pleasures in the world. And if we experience them with gratitude, they nourish our body and our soul. So, like, that would be like healthy food, exercising, dancing, whatever, yoga, swimming, music, being in nature. If we experience them with joyful gratitude, that's how we experience that lowest level of pleasure. And then going up the pleasure ladder, I explain it on the chart how you can keep bringing more and more connection and lasting pleasure into your life. And the price you pay to climb every rung on the pleasure ladder is gratitude. That is the secret to happiness.
And there's a place, you have a website or a web address on just that alone?
On the website, there's a place where, like a tag, and you go to the pleasure ladder. I think person has to put in their email address and then to download the chart. That I tell
Okay.
people, like, if they have a problem with any type of addiction, put the chart up and you'll know how to bring lasting pleasure into your life. Because when people are overeating or in other addictions they're engaging in, they just really want the pleasure to keep lasting. That's what they really want, so they keep eating. So this is how to really bring lasting pleasure into your life. Fill up on gratitude, and then you have no longer a need for the addictions. That's what I experienced, so that's what I'm sharing with everybody else. Yeah.
Okay. Very nice. I'll put that website address in the show notes so people will be able to find it. I think I also have your Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube
Yeah.
links that'll be in the show notes.
Okay,
With
great.
your
Thank you.
with with your experience in, maybe this will, for wrapping it up, your experience in spirituality and visualizing books and all that, where do you think that, do you have a visualization for how ideas come from wherever they come from to you? Do you have a, like, when you're quieting your mind and thinking about it, do you have some sort of visualization you do?
I mean, to me, it's just being open and not feeling any pressure, knowing it's not me, it's not my brain, it's a gift. And if that gift is meant to come into the world through me, I'm happy to do it. So, and if not, not, So I'm just open to seeing what happens. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much for your time and all your simple explanations for complex ideas. Do
Thank
you
you
have
so
any
much. Yeah.
you have any thoughts in closing?
Um, I, I, I guess I want to tell people, if you're ever feeling like writer's block or something like that, that comes from that pressure, and just relax and have a more playful attitude. Sometimes when I'm dancing, maybe this was part of your question, when I'm dancing or doing yoga, that's another time when I get ideas and I have to just jot them down because I'm in a flow state. Sometimes when I'm a passenger in a car or riding on a bus, because I'm just kind of flowing, or sometimes if I'm washing the dishes, I'm just like flowing, and then we can be more like vessels and experience what you get with gratitude, and then you'll really enjoy the entire process. And you don't have to, suffer about it. Just like whatever you get, and be grateful.
Nice. Well said. All right. I'll talk to you on the other side of this. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.